Okay, so last time I did a drawing session, I kind of went over a little bit of the basics of the tools that I use, but I figured I should go a little more in depth, just because, in particular, the pencil that I use has helped me, immensely in my drawing process. As you can see, I don't know if the camera is picking it up. It's a Pentel Orenz. It's Japanese, you can see from the Japanese writing on it. I had to order it on Amazon, but it's a 0.2 millimeter lens, LED, which is super fine. I'm not sure if that shows up on the camera there. But you have to be kind of careful with it, because one time I happened to poke myself in the finger with it, and it broke the skin like a needle. It was that thin. But a lead that thin allows for a lot of very intricate detail. Another thing that I've started using is this little glove thing. I recently got a drawing tablet. It was the Huon New 1060 Plus, and it came with this little thing to for when you're drawing on the tablet, and it works pretty well for not smudging pencil lines as well. So I kind of use it for both digital and for traditional inking now, or drawing now. This pencil is pretty much what I use exclusively during my drawing sessions. I have another pencil that I use specifically for erasing, it's another Pentel pen. I'm not really married to the Pentel brand or anything. It's just a super cheap Pentel pencil, but what I like about it is it has an extendable eraser. And the lead on this one's a 0.7, so if I needed to do something where I was maybe doing a lot of shading, I might switch to this pencil, but otherwise I just exclusively use it for erasing. Another 0.7 Pentel, and I have a few other Orenzas as well. I have a few other colors. I have a red, a blue, and a green. And the lead I had to special order off Amazon as well. You can see it is also covered in Japanese symbols. I'm not sure if it's called kanji. I could be totally wrong on that, but it works. The pencils work really, really well. Maybe to give you an idea of the difference, this here is the 0.7 lead pencil. And as you can see, it makes kind of a bold line. But the 0.2 lead pencil, it got caught in my half glove thing, it's a much finer line. I know there's not a ton of difference that you can see on the camera, but whereas if I needed to do some really, really intricate, fine detail work, I would go for that pen or that pencil over the 0.7 any day. Because it's just a matter of preference, but like I said, I've been pretty much exclusively using the Orenz pencil for my everyday drawing. And the other one for erasing. As you can see, it erases pretty well. Also, I always use the white erasers. They tend to take off a whole lot more, the pencil lines, than those, like, if you remember in school, they had those jumbo pink erasers. Those basically just smudged up the paper. This the white erasers are not perfect, but if you spend some time, you can get rid of most of the marks, provided you didn't, make a really dark mark on the paper, which I did, but from what I can see, it doesn't look like it's showing up on the paper on the video, so that is good. For inking, I use a variety of different inking tools. Let me pull this up here. I have a little silly pencil case that I keep my ink pens in. I have a number of these pigmented micron pens. I have a red, brown, green, black, blue. These are all the very fine tip. If I can get this out. That is the 005 point micron pens. So you can get really fine detail work with inks with it. I have the multiple colors if I want to break out my Copic markers. That's kind of why I have those different colors. Sometimes the line work looks a little better with colored lines. I also have a couple of these Faber-Castell pens. It's the Pitt series. I have a small and an extra small, which I don't remember what those translate to in terms of actual size in millimeters, but they're comparable to close to the extra small, at least is close to the micron. We also have a couple of Copic multi-liner pens. If you couldn't see the Faber-Castell, I realized I was talking about the Faber-Castell and not even looking at the screen, so I'm not sure if that showed up. So if I showed it to you twice, deal with it. Like I said, I use the Copic multi-liners. They've got the .03, 0.05, and then if I need to add some white over like a black area that I've already inked, I've got a couple of different options. I've got a Jelly Roll white pen, and then a Uniball Signo broad that lays down a lot of white ink. I also have this Sharpie paint pen thing that you have to shake as if it's a spray paint. It's pretty terrible. It doesn't work very well at all. Now, if I need to do a moderate amount of inking, like for a fairly large size, I'll switch over to a Pilot Precise V5. You can get these at any Meijer, Walmart, any drugstore has them. And then if I need to do a large area, trusty Sharpie. Can't go wrong with a Sharpie. So that's inking. Oh, I didn't show you my fancy pencil case that I created. I created the design and I used a wood burner to burn it in. I tried to do a little bit of texture on the dragon there. And Dracarys, that's from Game of Thrones, if you're not aware. That's where I keep my pencils. Well, let's draw something. Been about 10 minutes of tools, and you're probably bored with that. The paper that I'm drawing on, if I'm doing just a one-off piece for myself or something, I always go with Bristol board or cardstock. Bristol board is I usually use for larger pieces, and this size here is just cardstock. They're very similar. They might be the exact same thing. I'm not entirely sure. I've never actually looked into it. I just know that they feel very, very similar. It's about the size of a regular sheet of printer paper, but it's much thicker. It's closer to like an index card layer, or thickness layer. And I don't know. I kind of tend to prefer how it feels when I'm putting the pencil lines down. And for the larger pads of Bristol board, you can find those at Michael's. I'm sure any art supply store you could find them. But cardstock, I mean, I bought this at Meijer. You can get it at Walmart. You can get it, just about any store carries cardstock. Office Depot, Office Max, all of those stores carry cardstock. Well, like I said, let's go ahead and draw something here. As I mentioned in my previous video, I always like to start with the construction lines. And, I mean, they're basically like drawing a basic skeleton of a character. So, if you start with the head, which I normally start with the head, it's just my own personal style. If I start with the head, I usually draw in a circle with a line down the middle of it, kind of extending further than the bottom of the circle. The circle kind of represents the main like bulk of the head, and the center line is obviously the center line. If I kind of start to draw in the sides of the face here, kind of focusing on the jaw line, because there's a number of ways you can draw characters. If you want a big, muscular guy, you're probably going to want a very angular, strong jawline. If you want a younger character or a feminine character, you may opt for a softer, rounder jawline. Neither of them is wrong. It just depends on what type of character you want to create. For this particular character, I'm going to go with I'm going to go kind of in between the two. Like the sides of the jaw, I'm going to go ahead and make them pretty angular, but then kind of round the actual bottom of the chin. Like I said, there's lots of variation you can put in, and it all kind of evokes a different feeling when you're looking at the character, even if it's not a conscious decision or conscious. If you don't consciously notice it. You notice the top of the head actually extended a little higher than the initial circle that I drew. That's fine. It's just the circle is just a guideline anyway. And this character is going to be very stylized. I'm going to do a skinny little neck here. It's not really anatomically correct, but for stylization. And as you can see, I kind of go back and forth from doing construction line things like the circle and the line, and to actually putting in some more detail, and then I'm going to go back to the construction line when I get to the shoulders, so I can kind of get a feel for where the shoulders are going to be. And in the initial sketching phase, try not to be married to any line that you put down. That's kind of what the sketching phase is for. If you draw something that looks great at first, and then later on down the line you realize that it's just not working all together, well, if you're not committed to that first line, it's a lot easier to just scrap it and start over again and end up with a much better product. As you can see in my sketchy phase, as more of my sketch phase, my lines are pretty scratchy. There's not a lot of definitive motions or definitive line strokes. It's kind of on purpose. Like I said, it's just the design phase, but once I actually commit it down, I'll usually erase most of the scratch work and actually do a finished line on it. Sometimes I'll go straight from scratch work to inking, but not very often. I've been doing that more lately, but if I'm totally honest, I don't do that every single time. Probably should. It saves time, but if it were quick and easy, everybody would do it. Like I said, I draw kind of a stylized version of anatomy, not all that realistic when it comes down to it, but really the key thing is when you're practicing, don't jump right to a cartoony style. Draw realistically first. You want to have a good foundation set before you actually start bending the rules. You have to know the rules before you can bend them. I'm not great at regular traditional anatomy myself, but I know enough to get by. But, like any art teacher probably told you over the years, life drawing, like just actually drawing real people, is the best practice you can do. And when I'm doing the initial sketching phase, when I'm like drawing the hands in, I tend to kind of just block them off to have kind of a general idea of where all the fingers go. I don't draw them in individually initially, because if I spend all that time drawing them in and then realize the pose isn't working, then I just wasted a whole bunch of time. But if I just kind of give a vague hint of where they're supposed to be, I can much more easily erase that and start over again. Not always. Sometimes I'll, depending on the pose of the hand, I might put in a little bit of extra detail. But still, for the most part, I just kind of block the fingers in. So as you can see there, it just kind of gives a vague indication of the fist, which it's much more detailed than that hand, but still. And to the arms and legs, as I start out with just what looked like essentially just stick figure kind of legs. Again, it's just to get the pose down. Obviously, the next step that I take is to actually flesh out what the proportions of the legs actually are. Same with the arms, I'll do that in a moment. I've never been real great at drawing knees. I get by. My initial stage is kind of do a little cross to get an idea of where the front of it is. But a lot of times, if I'm trying to do a more serious piece, I'll end up, before doing the finished piece, I'll go and actually look at pictures of knees in like a as a reference to get it more correct. The clothing does some weird folds there. It's just weird. It's one of the things I really need to work on. One of the main reasons why I use this other pencil for my erasing is because on the Arens, as you can see, the eraser is kind of tiny. And it eats away pretty quick. For really small, fine detail, it's fine. And I will use it. I actually have a pack of replacement erasers ready to go as soon as this is all used up. As you can see, replacement erasers. But I figure conserve as much as I can. Once the replacement erasers are gone, I'd have to buy more. So if I don't need to, I'll conserve them. And sometimes I'll directly contradict something that I said. Ignore me on those from the fronts. Mainly, I just end up doing quite a bit of erasing with my Arens pencil here. Sorry if I'm kind of rambly. I'm still kind of getting used to recording audio, and I know a lot of dead air doesn't sound great, so I'm trying to fill it with my wonderful musings on drawing and whatnot, trying to kind of impart what I've learned over the years. La la la, sorry, I'm boring. What I'm drawing in here is I'm trying to draw like a very basic guard on a sword. Not the most realistic sword in the world, but serviceable. You can tell that it is a sword. I may change that later, but the design of it at least. So, I've got the general proportions and idea of what the character is going to look like. Next up is starting on some actual facial features. Just kind of trying to make a generically angry-looking person. Like I said before, the Lens eraser is really good for erasing very small details, just like the other end of it's good for putting down small details. The small eraser helps with getting rid of them. And for the nose, it's pretty stylized. I just kind of do kind of a weird angle shape for this particular one, since he's kind of looking down. There's 100 different anatomy tutorials that could do a much better job of explaining it than I could. You can find them on YouTube, all over the place. So I'm not really going to go all that into detail on, like, anatomy of particular facial structures or things like that. I'm not an expert in anatomy, and you can, like I said, you can find experts online. That's what I do when I get stumped. The biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody that's wanting to start to learn how to draw, or draw characters, character design, stuff like that, is if you get stuck, there are, like I said, YouTube is your friend. There's instructions on how to do just about anything on YouTube. So yeah, I that's, like I said, when I get stuck, that's what I do. I never draw the line. It's just or the mouth is just a straight line. I kind of do this kind of broken line shape with a dip in the middle of it. Kind of gives a hint at lips. Slightly more realistic. Sorry if there was noise in the background. I try my best not to have distraction noises. I have a cat somewhere around here that has a mind of her own that likes to play with plastic bags, which you might have heard a second ago. And she scratches on things sometimes.